October didn't exactly turn out the way that I was expecting it to, just because I was a little bit busier than I had originally anticipated, and I didn't get to all of the books that I wanted to. So this is my reading wrap up where I talk about the books that I did read in October. It wasn't a completely disastrous month, but it wasn't my best month either, but that's okay because November is already looking up. I read 6 books in October. I don't know how many pages they added up to because I haven't done that calculation, but I did read this chunky book, so I think my page count is actually quite high even though I didn't read too many books. My average rating was a 3.7, which I think is really, really good for me. It's higher than what my typical annual average normally is. I had 2 DNFs that I will briefly talk about later on in the video, and I read from 6 different genres, so I kept things quite fresh. The genres were mythology, fantasy, paranormal, mystery, literary, and crime. And with the stats out of the way, let's talk about the books that I read. Because I've already held this up, I'm going to talk about The Will of the Many first. So this is an epic fantasy book. It's the first book in a series. The second book, The Strength of the Few, is coming out in just a few days as I'm recording this, and I'm very, very excited because I gave this one 4 stars. So this is set in a fantasy world in a republic which is greatly inspired by the Roman Empire. It follows an orphan boy called Vis, who is 17 years old at the start of this book. He is actually a prince from an island called Seuss, except his whole family were killed by the Republic as they took over the island, and Vis is the only one who escaped. And so at the beginning of the book, he's an orphan. He is adopted by a really high up guy in the Senate because this senator wants to use Vis for his own gains. So the senator tells Vis to go to an academy and investigate something that's been happening there. The book follows Vis as he goes through the academy, goes up through the classes, gains a reputation, and also investigates what's going on. You've likely heard about the magic system in this book, which is very, very interesting. So it's based on a pyramid system where the lowest level of the pyramid gives power to the next level up, and the next level up gives some power to the next level up from that, and so on. There are 8 levels in total. Vis is refusing to join this pyramid. He doesn't want to give his will to anyone. But in the Republic, once you turn 18, you do have to do that, and so he is lying about his birthday because basically he doesn't want to give power to the Republic. As I said, I really, really enjoyed this book. As you can see, it's a very long book, and if you were to ask me whether the page count is worth it, I would say maybe. I did find the story to be fairly concise in that it didn't sort of drag on in any places, but due to the nature of the story and Vis having to first of all find out and investigate these things that are going on, but also him going through from the bottom rung of the class system in the academy, trying to get all the way to the top, that just took a while. It follows his whole year at the academy. There is a lot going on. I feel like the page count is kind of justified because we do follow Vis at each different level, but at the same time it's a very, very long book and it's going to take most people an age to get through. I think this is written really well. It's written in first person, and that's something that I sometimes struggle with, especially when we have a character such as Vis who is really good at everything, because I end up not caring if you're following a main character who is one of those people who is just naturally great and they know they're great. So even when they are struggling, you know that they are going to push through it and win. I really feel like you need a lot of outside challenges and things to come in and sort of like beat the character up, metaphorically or physically, who knows. Even though it's written in first person, the book does have a good amount of interactions with other characters, and you're not just in Vis's head the entire time. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversations happening, so I think that was balanced really, really well. Towards the end, you are mainly just following Vis on his own for a good chunk of the book, and that's where things started to drag a little for me, but then the action also picked up, so it balanced really well. I've seen a lot of comparisons for this one to The Name of the Wind, and I hated The Name of the Wind. I gave it 1 star. So if you didn't like The Name of the Wind, then don't be put off by the comparisons. Give this one a go, you might still like it. I find the whole pyramid thing very, very interesting because the entire thing can always expand and grow, so you're not kind of limited to just the one pyramid magic system, but at the same time, once the base of the pyramid is destroyed, it's all going to crumble down. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the author handles that in the future books, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Republic fall because I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. There's been a lot of talk about the ending of this one as well, and that's what initially intrigued me, but I was kind of like, are people just sort of bigging up this cliffhanger, making a big deal out of it? Because I've read a lot of books and maybe this was just standard, but actually the ending is really, really good. It hooked me and it made me very, very excited for the second book. I'm really glad that I read this one in October, so just before the second book comes out, because I don't think I'd want to wait 2 years for a sequel, except now I'm going to read The Strength of the Few in November, and I'm probably going to be waiting ages for the next book in the series, so I've kind of done myself over there. So overall, I gave this one 4 stars, really enjoyed it, and I'd recommend it if you enjoy academy fantasy, I guess. So next, I think I want to talk about the DNFs and the book that I kind of just sped through, because I don't really have much to say about them, but I would still like to feature these because I think some of you may like at least 2 of them. So the first one I'm not entirely sure about is First Lie Wins. This one ended up being more of a skim read. I gave it 2 stars, I believe. I talk about it a little bit more in the reading blog that I posted a couple of weeks ago. This follows a woman called Evie, and she is working for this sort of crime organization. She is pretending to be this person called Evie, and she is dating and about to marry a really rich guy. I think what happened was the crime organization wanted her to infiltrate this guy because of his business or something. But honestly, I just stopped paying attention because I just don't find those kinds of thrillers very interesting. I prefer a psychological domestic thriller rather than a crime thriller like this one. I just find these a lot more unrealistic. I'm sure stuff like this does actually happen in the real world. It just feels more unrealistic to me. I'd rather be reading fantasy books. To be honest. So I didn't love this one. I gave it 2 stars. I don't really have loads to say about it. I've also DNF'd Listen to Your Sister, and this is a shame because I was highly anticipating this one. This came out in, I think, January, February this year, and it's a horror book about a woman called Calla who is in her mid-20s and her parents have died, and so Calla is responsible for looking after her underage brother, and they also have a middle brother in there as well who's in his, I think, early 20s, but he's not really being very helpful, so a lot of pressure is on Calla. I didn't get very far through this one because I just wasn't enjoying the writing style or the pacing of it. I found it to be dragging quite early on, so I have DNF'd it. I didn't really get to the horror elements. I think Calla is meant to have someone talking to her in her head or something, but I didn't get to any of that. I'd still recommend giving this a go because it does have some good reviews. It's just the average rating is also quite low, so I think a lot of people had a similar experience to me and just didn't really enjoy the beginning. But it's a shame because the concept sounds interesting, so maybe read some reviews on Goodreads and decide if it could be something that you might like. It just seems like a very niche book that people don't generally enjoy. It's the right book for the right person, I think. And then I also sort of DNF'd or skim read The Devil Makes Three. This, I believe, is marketed as an adult book, but I actually feel like it's YA. So the characters are in school. They're in a really rich private school, academy, boarding school sort of thing. One of them works at the school library and the other one is borrowing books from the school library because he wants to heal his mother, who is currently dying. He and his mother both have sort of magical abilities, but he's not as good as his mother is at using those abilities. And she was a really good healer, but she can't heal herself, so he's really quite upset and wants to help her. The 2 of them meet and they end up unleashing a devil from the library. It was trapped in the books, and then they spend the book trying to get it back in. I think this one had a lot of potential. It just really dragged, and for the first 150 pages there's no devil and it just took ages to kick off, and it was definitely feeling more of a YA romance than a horror book, so that's why I put this one down. Well, I ended up skim reading it, so I know how it ends. It really wasn't the book for me. What was the book for me, however, nice segue there, was Mates by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this on 5 stars. I adored it. I liked it so much more than Bride as well, and I gave Bride, I think, 4.5 stars, so to say that I like this one so much more means a lot. This one follows Serena, who is Misery's friend from the first book, and I won't go into too much detail there because if I talk too much about Serena, I'm going to spoil what happens in Bride. So it's about Serena, and she meets a guy called Cohen, who also shows up in the first book, and I absolutely adore Cohen. In this book, Serena is going through a lot, let's just say, and she has received some news, very devastating news, and she's trying to keep it from people, and that sort of thing sometimes annoys me. It depends on the character, but I think Ali Hazelwood pulled it off really well here. Serena is keeping everything very close to her chest, and so that means that there's a lot of almost miscommunication, but mostly misunderstanding, because people don't understand why she is acting so weirdly and why she is doing the things that she's doing. To us, the reader, it kind of starts to make sense after a while because you start to understand what's going on with her. And as I said, she meets Cohen, who is a werewolf from a different pack to Lo from the first book, and I absolutely love Cohen. This is going to spoil my November wrap up, and also don't let this put you off, but Cohen is giving Rhysand. And if you've read Akamath, which I now have, and this book, you'll know what I mean. It makes sense. There are so many similarities there, and I don't think that's intentional on the author's part. Ali Hazelwood probably hasn't read ACOTAR, and honestly her writing is so much better than Sarah J Maas's. Anyway, the characters are very similar, and it makes sense that I apparently love them both. There is a mystery going on throughout this book, and I was a little bit concerned that it would turn into something a bit weird, like a phantom pregnancy or something, but I think Annie Hazelwood pulled it off, and I do trust her. So I think she does paranormal romance really, really well, and she needs to write more. I'm a bit sad that people don't tend to love this duology, or at least the first book, Bride, because I think it's fantastic and I want to see more paranormal romance, urban fantasy from her. There is some cult stuff in this book actually that was a minor plot point. I feel like it should have been a bigger plot point. It was kind of there and then it was over very, very quickly. So that was interesting. I thought that was going to be a massive deal, but this book is already quite long for a paranormal romance book. It's over 400 pages, so I guess Ali was told to stop writing at some point. But I'd recommend this. I love it. Don't listen to the people who say that it's gross or disgusting or it's not a good romance. I completely disagree. I don't know what people are talking about. Another book that I really, really enjoyed and I gave 4 stars is The Break. And again, I talk about this more in a reading blog that I posted recently, in which I'm trying to read through an entire shelf. So this book is set in a small town in Canada, at least I think it's a small town, it might be a city, I don't actually know. And it follows a family. There are 3 or 4 generations of this family who are parts Indigenous. So you've got like the matriarch, and then you've got her 2 daughters, one of which has passed away, and then you've got the cousins generation, and then you've got the, what would be the first cousins once removed, the generation after the cousins. And basically what happens at the start of the book is one of the main characters, who is one of the cousins, she witnesses an attack happening on a girl outside her window. It's in an area that they call the Break, and the impression I get is it's kind of like a green or like an empty space in some sort of like housing estate where people pass through. And the attack happens, she calls the police. She doesn't run out there because she's got kids in her house and she doesn't want to be attacked as well. And the police arrive, but then there's only blood in the snow. There's no victim there at all. The attackers certainly aren't still around, they've all fled. And so they start questioning her and questioning what she saw and not believing her. And that's kind of like only the tip of the iceberg for how this book features Indigenous people and shows how society treats them and how people in power and authority treat non-white people. There are multiple points of view in this book, and I normally find that quite difficult. Oh, hello. Hello. Do you want to say hi? What was I saying? He's distracted me. There are multiple points of view in this book, and that's something that I normally struggle with, especially when I feel like the book is jumping around quite a lot. But in this one, it felt like all of the points of view were justified. Because you really needed to see many of the members of this family to see what was going on with them, because they were all experiencing something different. They all had their own struggles throughout each generation. Although the struggles were very similar, they all dealt with them in different ways, or they were all treated in different ways. There's one character in this book who's actually not related to the main family, and we get his point of view. He's a police officer, and I found that very, very interesting because he is part Indigenous, and so we learn his story of how he joined the force, the police force, and how he is treated by his colleagues. And even though he technically has this position of power, he is not on the same level as the white policeman. I found that very, very interesting. Canadian history also isn't something that I know loads about, so I enjoyed reading that as well and learning a bit more about that. So it's something that I do want to look into a bit more. This book is the first book in a companion series. So the next one is called The Strangers, and that follows a very interesting character from this first book. I'm looking forward to reading that, but I don't know if I'll read the 3rd book in the series. I can't remember what it's called, maybe like The Circle or something, just because the reviews for The Circle aren't as good as The Strangers and this one. So I'd highly, highly recommend this. As I said, I gave it 4 stars, and it's one that I probably want to reread. I may even increase my rating upon a reread because I feel like I'll get more and more out of it as I go along. I also read Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. This is the sequel to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. It's a mystery series set in Australia. This one is set specifically on a train which runs from Darwin in the north to Adelaide in the south, and it stops along the way. So there's a sort of fan writing convention happening on this train, and the main character has been invited along with I think like a handful of other authors, maybe 6 or 7. He's really struggling with writing his next book because he has been asked to write a fiction book, but the last book that he wrote was a non-fiction based on his family killing people, and so he doesn't really know where to start with the fiction side of things. And so he feels like he doesn't really belong in this group of authors. They all know a lot more than him. He's kind of fanboying a lot about some of them in particular, and he just really wants to fit in. His agent is there, she's really trying to push him to write a new book, but he can't. And then someone on the train is killed or dies. It's unclear at the start, but you know, it's a murder. I did enjoy this one. It's just with this series, the writer in this series is following a bunch of rules, and he sets out the rules in the beginning. So they're like murder mystery rules that were established by the greats. So they are in the Sherlock Holmes books and in many, many other murder mysteries. The author of the book lays out the rules right at the start, and you know the book is going to follow them. It's entirely possible that the rules sort of bend, but they never break. And so you kind of know what to expect from this kind of book, and it's not really the sort of thriller or mystery that I enjoy. I quite like it when things come out of left field, although not too much. And I like to be really surprised, but with the rules in place, you can only be surprised so much. So I'm not a massive fan of this series, but I do enjoy it. So I may read the next book, but I probably won't buy it. I'll probably get it from the library or as an e-copy. So I gave this one 3 stars. And then finally, I'm going to end on a high. I read Lore Olympus Volume 9. This is the latest one that has released. It came out in October. And this is almost the end of Hades and Persephone's story. I know all of the books are out on the Webtoons site, but that site is really annoying to go onto, so I'm just waiting until each book is released now. You probably all know what it's about. It's a graphic novel series about Hades and Persephone. The first 2 volumes are a bit naff, I have to say, because it wasn't originally drawn or written to be a physical book, and so the artwork is very dark. It doesn't really work all that well in print, but now 9 volumes in, it's really, really good, and I do really, really enjoy it. I love the storylines, I love the artwork. It's just a really nice style. It is a little bit over the top at some points, and I really feel like the main character Persephone, she's drawn as a self-insert from the author. I like their story so much that I can forget about that. I just love this pairing. I think it's wonderful, so I gave this one 4 stars. And that's my wrap up for October. Thank you so much for your help, Saxon. You were so helpful. Do you have anything to say? He can't read, so he doesn't really have any opinions. Overall, it was a good reading month. As I said, I had a really high average rating for me. 3.7, it's really good. You can round it up to 4. Let me know if you have any opinions on any of these books. Let me know what your favourite book of October was in the comments below so I can check it out. And thank you for watching. I'll talk to you all in the next video. Bye.